Welcome back, Smite fans, to day number 2 of the SPL promotional tournament and set number 2 about to be underway. We'll get our first look at the Gilded Gladiators, who didn't get a chance to play yesterday. We're going to see how they look today. Up against the Xibalba Storm, a team that was kind of on maybe some of the lower seedings of predictions, but have come out with some very interesting picks that were able to help them find a win yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit about both those teams as we move in towards this set. I'm J-Mac. I got Mifflin joining me on the desk this time around to help me as we get the breakdown of these teams. Looking at the rosters through, as I said, we got to see the Storm yesterday, some unconventional style of play. The double assassins seem to kind of be their go-to ideal and their kind of the identity that they've made for themselves to find their win. But now we take a look at the Gilded Gladiators, a bunch of players who were either right at the top of the SCC last year or right at the bottom of the SPL before they made their exit out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm the only caster that had the Gilded Gladiators back.
I think so.
I love bookie odds. These guys have played at the highest level most recently, so I think that certainly have earned their seeding. I've got high expectations for this team. Some of them have taken a gap year recently. For these not in the know, top to bottom, I'll go through it in order. That's Dude Man Bro, Inbound, Snoopy, Kyrmi, Scary D, and it's Kassir acting as the coach. All names you should be very familiar with if you've been watching the Smite Pro League or the top-level SCC matchups. DMB, the SCC representative for this team right now. Inbound, of course, took a gap year after his leave from the Solar Scarabs, but besides that, these guys have been playing at a very high level very recently. And I think this meta, having had an opportunity now, a couple of days, a couple of sets, start to see how it's beginning to develop, really does favor this team. We see junglers getting active early. That's what Kyrmi loves to do. We see laners just sitting in solo forever until they're level 20. Scary D was doing it when it was bad, so now that it's good, you got to think he's still going to be doing it, right? So I do have a lot of confidence in this team and their ability to play. They've got strong in-game leaders. Inbound, one of the most vocal players I've had the experience to hear yell into a microphone. Snoopy as well, ever the veteran, and a cool head, should be able to act as the yes or no man for this team. Top to bottom, hard to say how they're going to look as a cohesive 5-man unit. Haven't seen it just yet. We'll get a good idea of it during this set. But as far as individual talent goes, this team's got it in spades.
And it feels like when we talk about junglers and the jungle-centric meta that we're in, as you know,
I might not be about it anymore after that Aqua performance, honestly.
Aqua did kind of pop there. But when I think of of junglers who don't necessarily play that facilitator style, the junglers who want to get in there, they want to do the work themselves, Kyrmi is one of the ones that comes to mind when he was playing on the Valkyries. He was playing things like the Lancelot, the Dodgy, even at times the Osiris when that was still in that kind of hard carry style of play. Feels like this should be a meta that also kind of fits Kyrmi's bill.
Yeah, capable of playing things like the Thor as well, Ratatasker firmly within his god pool, these solo agent, global presence, get involved, stun them, and knock them down yourself style picks. Kyrmi certainly has had plenty of experience playing around that. But it's whether or not his team is willing to play through him, whether or not they decide to play through solo like we had seen in the previous set, how they've developed their meta. A lot of these guys haven't had an opportunity to see what everybody else is doing. Instead, they have to address the changes and figure out what they want to do and figure out what their identity is almost in a vacuum. And it's interesting to see how all these different teams have come up with different answers to how Season 10 should be played. Don't know for the Gladiators, but if we were to talk about the Storm, I mean, they're not doing it like anybody else right now.
No, they are playing their own meta. I mean, we look back yesterday, it was Valo and MandoWarrior playing the double assassin, running it down at any point. And this wasn't like, okay, I'm going to build like this super tanky assassin on one side. They were going burst. We saw a little bit of hybrid build out of Valo in the third game, whenever he was playing the Circuit.
That was full
But outside of that, he's been slamming the Thors, full power. Mando's running these assassins, the Loki, the cleanup from the last game as well. This is a team that is playing a completely different brand of Smite than any other team out here in this event.
A hyper-pick-focused brand of Smite. Try and find the 3v1s, the 2v1s on the map before you start rotating in towards these objectives. Given the opportunity and you think a team fight's going to happen on the objective, we saw MandoWarrior, once he got off of ranged carries, start to play things like the Loki and just become a split-push animal. So certainly a diversified win-condition team, but unorthodox Smite only works so long as it is unorthodox. If you can figure out the answers, if you've got the time and the data to look at how it worked out, where the weaknesses lie, there are answers to be sure. So whether or not the Gladiators have done their homework or paid attention to the Xibalba Storm set previously, I think will become evident, not only in P's and B's, but also in the first 10 or so minutes of the game. Otherwise, I think the Storm probably playing with a chip on their shoulder right now. They come out, nobody's got them as their favorites. A lot of people expected them to go out in the first set. They've already played upset once, and they look good doing it as a bounce-back victory, going down in Game 1 handily. I believe it was only 1 kill, and then from there, 2 long, hard-fought battles that go their way. They're playing with house money right now, and that's a dangerous place to be in, a dangerous team to play against if you're the Gladiators.
It's even funny, reading through Twitter and social media after, where a couple of players on the team were like, we weren't supposed to win that one. We weren't supposed to find a victory in the first day. And they're coming in today and saying, we're also probably not supposed to win this one or find a victory, but we're going to do whatever we can to maybe make some upsets, get some waves rolling for this team. And it's definitely one that if you give them an inch, they will take a mile with this double assassin. So I wonder what the answer will be for the Gilded Gladiators. They put some focus in the duo lane, try and keep maybe MandoWarrior down, not allow this assassin style of play to get that free farm, to become that late game one-tap style of assassin? Or do they maybe put that focus somewhere else? Maybe play through that soul lane like you were saying through Scary D.
Yeah, I wonder, if you dedicate bans to assassins in first phase, worst case scenario, you're banning out the enemy jungler. Best case, you hit them both, right? So things like the Cliodhna, I wouldn't be surprised if the Gladiators just go ahead and take that off the table for her ability to not only jungle, but also to play as a laner. But otherwise, it is very difficult to go into a match and say, like, we got to get rid of the Loki. Like, we can't deal with the Loki ADC, or we got to get rid of XYZ, especially considering the very low pool of games and data they have on whether or not that is the best version of the Storm, or if that just happened to be what they played on day of. So I think, as always, in a best-of-3 set or a best-of-5 set or any time where it's set play, Game 1, play your standard. Play what everybody else is playing, play what you've been practicing, and then the adaptations come a little bit later on. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Gladiators just go towards the normal, ban out the normal stuff, get rid of the mage ADCs, and the Storm, we'll see if they want to go directly to their unorthodox or if they'll do what they did in the previous set, which is, again, play standard in Game 1.
I'm also curious if there's going to be maybe some respect thrown towards Vyye on that Tiamat. I believe played it all 3 games and was nearly top damage on every single one if he was. And we'll see what the Gladiators do to answer to the Xibalba Storm as we jump into the picks and bans for game number 1. My answer number 1 is to go ahead and not allow Valo to play this Thor. Absolute pop-off performance in game number 2 in the Storm set yesterday with this pick, so no surprise to see a little bit of respect thrown that way. The Merlin will be the immediate response by the Storm, and then the Tiamat, making sure that Vyye has to play something different today in that mid lane.
You called it, but this does leave a lot of value on the table. Unlikely that you're banning out really any magical ADCs from here. Maybe just the one if you're concerned about one pick, but I would be surprised if 2 eat a ban. So at least 3 are going to make it through. You've got the high priority Guardians still available as well. Maui, Yamoja, both incredibly strong right now. We've seen a good deal out of the Soul Laners getting their priority picks. Vamana seems to be the cream of the crop right now. A lot of people talking about this pick and how well it disrupts the backline, how difficult it is to really shut them down, and the almost non-engagement style that he plays, which is Vamana's going to walk up to the wave, clear it, you're not going to kill him because he's a tank, and he's going to walk between your tower and do it again and eventually rotate to the team fight. So we'll see where that pick priority lies. Freya will eat a ban. I think from here, maybe you put eyes towards Kyrmi's God Pool. Could be trying to take away from him. Naja, double dip. Kyrmi, capable of playing it, as is Inbound.
Gonna make sure those are taken out, but it will not be a Magical Hunter picked up first. The Soul, Olorun, Chronos, all 3 still available. Instead, it will be a Maui picked up for the Gilded Gladiators. That one will go over for Inbound in the support role, so we'll get to see our first competitive look for Inbound on this pick. He wasn't around when Maui was up and available for them, so curious to see what his performance will be now that he's had some time with this god in the rank scene and scrims and whatnot for him. What would the Xibalba Storm answer with, as mentioned, a few magical hunters still available, Soul, Olorun, Chronos, all up there. Maybe some picks for Vyye as well. It seems that at least the Gladiators have put a little bit of respect towards their mid.
Yeah, you maybe want to hold off on Vye's selection. Vamana, of course, just a decent plug-and-play pick. Essentially fits into every single composition. The Cliodhna pick that I talked about a little bit earlier, great flex potential. Should keep the Gladiators guessing. Has flex between both ADC, could go solo, could go jungle as well. So high damage output, high objective burn. Generally what Cliodhna brings to your team comp, as well as just the ability to disrupt that backline while hiding inside of those walls. And Season 10 might just be a buff for Cliodhna. All these walls, all these narrow jungle paths, very easy for her to slip out of these engagements or slip into them as well without really registering on anybody's radar. Hades, though, a pick that was dominating the last quarter of Season 9, has since fallen off a good deal. Didn't see him too often during the World Championship run now, making his first appearance here in Season X. High damage output, good control, but I wonder how he utilizes some of these newer items. Are you a Tablet of Destiny user? I'm not so certain. How has the Bancroft's Claw build changed? How are you going to itemize around it? I'm excited to see, but you gotta assume, maybe, that it's Hades mid. Considering how powerful the mitigation build is, I feel like you really do like having a warrior over in that soul lane. I'm curious, the Gladiators, they're bringing a different look.
You know, either a warrior that can go mitigations or a guardian that can stack tablet up real easily. Things like the Jormungandr, we've seen Artio as well, the options. And Baba Yaga for the Xibalba Storm. God, that we saw a lot of from the European teams at the tail end, or I can't even say the tail end, pretty much all of Season 9, Baba Yaga was under the eye of the European players. So it really didn't come out into fruition until the very tail end of Season 9 when we saw a lot of favoritism towards this god. We picked up for the mid lane for the Storm, and immediately some mage bans for the Storm. It will be an Agni taken away, and the Gladiators respond by taking a shot towards Dingodile. Not just the Ymir from earlier on, but the Ares from that third game as well.
J-Mac, take into account functionally how this top 3 works in the team fight. Because the adaptation from the Storm in the previous set was all of our drafts W key. Even our mages W key. We saw the Tiamat leap in every single time. Get into that quadrupedal stance, be a part of the front line. Baba Yaga is capable of functioning a very similar way. Hop into the home sweet home, knock everybody away from you, benefit from the HP shield, and W key while not eating any sort of like auto attack movement speed decrease. It's very similar to Vamana. They both transform, they both walk forward, and Cliodhna's got really strong chase down potential as well. I wonder how the Gladiators decide to address the rest of this draft, because they've got pretty decent counter engage as is. Maui's got really strong peel. Hades can really put a stopper on a lot of this aggression. A 2-second fear, pretty good in situations like that, or even just the Pillars of Agony, giving over survivability and holding your opposition in place could really slow down some of these pushes. Ganesha pick that we've seen already from the Storm, generally just used for that Dharmic Pillars to slow down everybody else so the rest of them can get in there and get into range. Then they play around that defense aura very well. The Storm, they found their identity in the previous set, and they're sticking with it.
You're talking about the knockup that comes from Baba Yaga, Vamana with his dash have it, so respect a wheelish ban from the Gladiators, seeing that maybe that could be a composition style that the Storm could be going towards. With that, Ganesha would have added a third one in there.
They got to think it's Cliodhna ADC
banned away. You got to think so, but as you mentioned, maybe some flexibility. We did see a Cliodhna jungle earlier on into the event, so still some flex with that god. See where the Xibalba Storm will go at their last pick. So does this Cliodhna go to Mando? Does this one go over to Valo? That's the question that still has to be answered with the Storm's final pick. Gladiators looking for maybe a mid, as you alluded to, potential is Hades going over towards Snoopy, so maybe a mid or a solo, depending where that one goes through. And then a jungle pick, at least for Kyrmi. What does Kyrmi go towards? A lot of things still open. First thing that immediately comes to mind for me, probably the Lancelot that's seen a little bit of popularity this weekend for him.
Lancelot comes to mind. Hunbots doesn't feel great here. Vamana and Baba Yaga both have really strong answers to Fear No Evil, and I know that it is solidly within the god pool of Kyrmi. Maybe things like Rat, Susano, of course, very strong here as well. If you can catch these targets unawares, the damage output that he's got very high, just off of his CC alone. Still have plenty of options. Looking at the draft, I would like to see just a little bit more CC for the Gladiators, something that's a little bit more confirmable. Maui brings plenty of it on his own, but it's largely single target outside of that ultimate. Mercury, decent CC, range initiation, also single target. Great scaling though, and very strong at dealing with picks like Vamana and Baba Yaga. These guys that go into the big form in Smite, things like Cthulhu, Vamana, Baba Yaga, I'm in my enhanced state, you don't want to fight me. Mercury is really good at fighting those guys. Large target, easy to hit, and nobody's outboxing you. Get up that crit build, and you feel pretty decent about it. This Loki pick, though.
Well, now I don't know.
Yeah, now I don't. I mean, MandoWarrior played the Cliodhna more often, and most recently. I'd much prefer to have the Cliodhna in the lane. Yeah, I'm saying Loki jungle every time.
So potential Loki jungle for Valo. Maybe we see Mando go back to the Cliodhna like we saw in Game 3 of the Storm set yesterday. But one thing that was kind of discussed between myself and Trelly, and I'll kind of open up the floor to you on this one, is this Mercury. Not as many avenues to get ganks in these side lanes anymore with the way that these lanes are curving away, with how many pathways in the jungle have kind of been cut off by all these new walls and structures that have gone up. Do you feel that really does affect the Mercury in this kind of situation?
I feel like the Merc gank still exists. Hey, I'll just path through my own jungle, then walk into the tier 1 tower and line it up from there. That still is certainly an incredibly viable option. But I don't think Mercury getting a little bit worse at sonic booming all the way across the map through the horizontal axis is a big deal, considering how easy it is for junglers to walk in a lane just by pressing W, right? Because there are so many more winding avenues in the jungle, it's very difficult to lock down those jungle paths with wards. One sentry ward always gives you an opportunity to get into these lanes. So Mercury, I think, probably just fine. And you're not exactly drafting him for that early game pressure like we saw previously with like Sanford Soccer and Panda Cat rocking like Danza, Burrow, Mercury together. It's not that style of wombo combo, and it's not that Mercury anymore. Instead, we've got late game hyper carry Mercury, who's just going to build some crit and one-shot you later.
And kind of speaking on the late game maybe style of play for both these squads out here, the Xibalba Storm, the 2 games that they won went towards the depths, sometimes 38 to 45 minutes of play for them. It seems those Assassins, they're fine going to that point of the game. You can get your 2-tap on there, take out your carries. Is this a combination for the Gladiators that can maybe answer to that late game style of play?
Late game, your team fight's pretty strong. The 5-on-5 engagement actually looks pretty good here. You've got high damage output, decent ranged engagement. It's non-committal initiation from the Maui, so I like how the 5-on-5 looks. But the Storm were very 5-on-5 adverse. They so seldom actually grouped up and defended a Fire Giant as 5 or defended a Gold Fury as 5 or even tried to go in for the Fire or Gold Fury as 5. It's always one person acting as a solo agent trying to distract somebody. Hey, you might want to group up right now, but I'm on your tier 2 on the opposite side, or I'm threatening your Phoenix. And that's something that this double assassin composition really lends itself towards, because maybe now more than ever, assassins feel really good in the 1v1. There are not many roles that want to line up against a level 20, 6-item stacked, any assassin, really.
Well, it's our first look at the Gilded Gladiators on play. We can see if the Xibalba Storm can keep this double assassin momentum rolling as we jump into game number 1 with Dolson and Trelly.
And another one of the fan favorites on the battleground now. The Gilded Gladiators make their Smite Pro League promotion tournament debut. Dolson, Trelly, and Doug with you for game 1, game 2, and maybe game 3 if we get there. And Trelly, the Xibalba Storm, a scrappy team, able to find a win yesterday. Feeling a bit more confidence now in their abilities, but they're going up against a team in the Gilded Gladiators that, you know, if all the casters are saying the wargs are going through, we've had a couple predicting that the Gladiators might fill that second SPL spot.
Certainly could. I mean, I think that saying they have immense talent on this team is understating it, of course, but I think what we all highlighted in on when speaking of this team is the fact that wishy-washy play throughout the entirety of pretty much every player on this squad. I think Snoopy the most consistent that I've seen from this team, and I hope to see them all play to their, their strength that we know they can. And if they do, they should have an easy time here. But the Xibalba Storm, to your point, have had a great tournament thus far. They've went with some weird strats, and it looks like they're running them back here. They have Valo on the Loki and jungle. That's not what I'm looking at. MandoWarrior on the Cliodhna ADC.
Yep.
And that is going to bring some interesting strats, as well as I've been talking about how I think that Merc is not great on this current map. Myth seems to disagree, and I want to see a good Mercury game because I have not seen the value of picking Merc so much, and he has been banned a ton. I'm assuming he's been dominating scrims, and I am very curious to see exactly how Kyrmi decides to play it. Actually goes for the blink. Isn't even going to have beads on this Mercury, so I assume he wants to get active very early on.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, just simply the way the map is built, right? You normally, in the Season 9 map and in maps of past, you can sit behind the Tier 1 tower even and just shoot straight down the lane. You have to move and play those angles a bit differently, specifically over here in duo and over in solo lane a bit as well. Now, you talk about win rates and pick rates and ban rates. Trelly, we've seen a few Vamana games. Those have all been wins. And then we've seen a couple Loki games. Those have been wins as well. And so 100% win rates on a couple of the picks here for the Xibalba Storm. And it's kind of continuing this conversation that has now begun with what we saw Aquarius do in our last set. The Kukulkan, unkillable, got full mitigation build, spun up. We've seen that on the Vamana a bit, and it's the same type of result. Needing to find answers to the solo laner for the Gilded Gladiators this game, going to be very, very important.
I don't imagine we see Snoopy go 2 tank items on Raw, though. I think that might be a big difference maker, as well as the fact that you're not double dipping into the double mage tree with a magical ADC. Dude Membro on a physical Ishtar will bring another level of shred I don't think you want to be hitting the Vamana too much. Mostly when you see that ult go through, it's either, hey, we're dropping Lonk, we're dropping Sunder, we're killing him immediately, or we're going to try to ignore this Vamana and fight, after that ult comes through. And if MaIachi decides to build that full mitigation style, it will take a bit. Valo taking a lot of damage.
Oh,
Has
Kyrmi
to find a blink out here.
Doesn't have it, though. Kyrmi so close to picking up first blood alongside Snoopy. Love to see it from Kyrmi. You think about the year that Kyrmi had last year, that Valhalla Valkyries team, hard-pressed to find consistent momentum, but Kyrmi, a player who, whenever roster changes were happening, centered around the jungle or role swaps, Kyrmi, by his own admission, had been talked to and looked at different points throughout the year, and such an exciting player to watch. He's got a great mind for the game and the way he thinks about things and processes information. Makes him one of my favorite players to watch, and I think having a good event this weekend going to be very important for Kyrmi. Not only, of course, I mean, you want to make it to the SPL, right? But for his future and his career, after what was probably a disappointing performance during Worlds qualifiers, this is now a bounce-back opportunity and potential statement opportunity for Kyrmi over the course of the next few days.
Yeah, and I think it has to be. If he wants to, keep that confidence, he needs to have a good performance here. Started off well for sure, as Inbound goes for the attempted invade, doesn't quite find it.
Yeah, how about Inbound? Do you think he's in a similar spot, needs to make some noise here over the next few days?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We had our little caster roundtable where we talked about every single one of these teams.
It was your one-stop shop for
the one-shot shop, exactly, if you ignore all the other things. And if Inbound wants to continue his career, he's got to have a standout performance here. He has to show, hey, I'm better than every single other person in this tournament, and I deserve to be in the SPL, right? Those are the kind of plays. You can't just come through and coast by and say, hey, I hit some good CC. I just kind of, walked through lane, did okay. No, you need to absolutely dominate. And so far, the Gilded Gladiators have had a quiet performance thus far, but Snoopy making a rotation over. Wants to snipe the
so
shield
close.
buff.
Well, shield buff gets picked up anyway. Searing Pain did most of the damage, but not all of it. Few ultimates expended. Get the buff. All right, so we're checking a box for the Gilded Gladiators, but the landfall didn't pull anyone. Forced the beads off of Mando. And Dingodile able to scurry away, but Dudeman Bro sent out the Ishtar ultimate there as well. This is going to be an interesting duo lane for the Gilded Gladiators to watch grow a bit over the course of this weekend. It's a pair of players. Admittedly, I don't know their history with one another. This might be it for the two of them. Building up that chemistry is going to be important. And a good opportunity to show us what they've got, because on the flip side, Trell, you haven't talked much about the Storm just yet, who I think impressed yesterday. But still, sticking with some of the eclectic duo lanes, you got the Ganesha that's going to provide some good utility. But the power curve of this Cliodhna will be fun to follow along with here in game number 1.
Certainly will. Early on, you're not gonna. You just don't have that amount of wave clear. But once Cliodhna gets access to both of the ult ticks and gets that Soul Eater online, then you can kind of step up to the wave and try and actually find those fights. It's just not something that MandoWarrior is going to be able to contest with in the early. Actually, we do see a little bit of a scrap here between Kyrmi and Valo.
Yeah, he doesn't want it. Kyrmi charges up. The ultimate uses it, but simply not enough, and that's a solo for Valo, and the Xibalba Storm jungler spots out Kyrmi, trades ults, and wins that trade handedly. Still had half of his HP remaining. And Trey, that's a simple case of knowing your abilities and knowing your power curve to the T in the first 5 minutes of game 1.
Yeah, I think you could have asked anyone at the beginning of this game, hey, who wins in a 1v1 at level 6, Loki or Merc? If the Mercury's going blink over beads, yeah, there's no way Kyrmi actually wants to take that fight. I assume thought Scary D was going to rotate over, or maybe thought could rotate out there, but Bluestone Jotuns is beating Eye of the Jungle Golden Blade every single time. That's an easy kill for Valo, and
yep.
I would look to do that again. Kyrmi started blink. Until level 12, no safety from that assassinate unless you're pre-charging that Sonic Boom. If I'm Valo, I am finding Kyrmi in the jungle, and I'm trying to do that twice more before level 12.
There's a couple builds I want to look at early here. Notably, Scary D in Vyye. And you and I talked a bit about this before the cast, Trelly. I know Tablet has been talked about extensively over the course of just the last couple of days of competition already. Seen it in the solo lane a couple of times. This is our first look at Hades and how this character wants to build out a solo. So it's Book of Thoth for Scary D. Also Book of Thoth for Vyye, which makes some sense when Baba Yaga is going to stack that effectively, considering the alternative in the tablet.
And, Snoopy's going for the tablet. I think he's going to be trying to use that heal to take it as much as possible in the early game. It's kind of difficult to actually land your Celestial Beams consistently. It's a very slow-moving ability, and if you have to hit it 50 times between now and late game, it's not going to work out. But that one tick of the heal
He just needs to
easy.
cast
This
it
gonna
50.
be
He's hitting all of it, right? He's hitting all of it, so you just got to cast it 50 times.
Of course.
Of course. Well, Snoopy's going to have a chance to help confirm. Does not have Searing Pain, might not need it. Xibalba Storm rotating out of mid towards the Gold Fury, but not in time. Love the shot calling look from the Gilded Gladiators. Early Gold Fury pull, though. Early in Season 9 standards, maybe right on time so far here in Season 10. And a little advantage now built up for the Gladiators. Almost 2,500 gold in the advantage of the Xibalba Storm. Despite the Storm finding that solo kill, has not slowed down Kyrmi, who's just returned back to farming.
And that's what we expect. But usually, hold that thought, Valo wants to try and find a gank here. Who's it going to be? Is it Inbound or Dude Man, bro? Maybe both.
And Dharmic Pillars, that corrals this fight, and it's Vyye from mid as well. The Baba Yaga, without ult, didn't need it. Drops the Gilded Gladiator support. And the Storm now have been effective in finding kills and trading kills, but just a bit slow on neutral farm and farm around the map. Dude Man, bro, maybe in a bit of trouble. We'll dash away and be okay. And so it could have been more clean there from the Gladiators. They get the Gold Fury, but end up getting called by the Storm.
And that's the thing. When we see the SPL teams facing off SCC teams, and in this case, a sort of Frankenstein's monster of old pros up against people that quite haven't made that jump yet, it's usually this bit of a farm diff. Where, yeah, the SCC squads, in this case the Xibalba Storm, pull up 2-0, but that gold differential is pretty big for this early in the game. 2,000,
yeah.
And it was big before the Gold Fury even came through. The Gilded Gladiators are just farming the map better, but it looks like the Storm are finally trying to get some legs up, trying to find where they can get aggressive off the back of a nice duo lane gank. Inbound is not, contrary to what you might believe about this cloak item, early on you are not tanky. It takes a bit before you actually get those stacks online, so I'm thinking the Maui could be a good target here for aggression.
Do you like it early, though? Because sometimes it takes a while to build up those stacks.
No, I love it early. I just think you have to play a bit safer. As you said, Fury, get out.
Right.
That was more of a Fury, stick around, clear the wave. Kyrmi said, hey, maybe I can ult in, maybe we can fight this. They could have just completely ran, and I think it would have worked out just fine. But now, a bit of a damage check there for Inbound. Now he knows, hey, maybe I should stack this up more, get one more tank on him before I can really frontline in these engagements.
I think Kyrmi steps over a ward on his way to the Xibalba Storm side of the jungle, so nothing all that sneaky from this Mercury, though Kyrmi might have thought he was. Could be a rage second item for Kyrmi. That's usually when you see the Mercury start to get a bit more active, looking for those kills, those assists, though later on throughout the game, the odds of finding a fair few stacks still just fine, but you like to get them built up early. There is like the curse of the rage where you build it, and then you never get any stacks from that point on. That's just the way that works sometimes. But Kyrmi, far too good a player to fall prey to that, I think. Snoopy's gone double stacking here. Talked about the tablet earlier. That's got a handful of stacks on it right now. Book of Thoth after that. And so already, Trelly, you're going to get these stacks maybe towards that mid-game point. This Raw should be in a good spot.
For sure. And I think there's a fair bit of setup as well. They've got plenty of CC coming through if Scary D is able to rotate out. And then Inbound, I think, is with the landfall ultimates and even the pulls in, could start to add up. And this is what I've been talking about. I know that Mifflin said in the game prior that it's a bit greedy to go for the Book of Thoth second, but I think it works out better as Scary D does force out that ultimate, trying to grab the blue there, and it's going to work out. Because you're going to get the Book of Thoth stacked regardless. That's going to happen. You're sitting there clearing waves as a mid laner, but actually getting meaningful poke, it's nice to try and get those stacks online as quickly as possible, and it looks like that's the call here. As we do see a bit of a scrap between Mando and Dude Man, bro.
He's trying to hit those autos. He's trying. Mando's slippery, though. Shield buff still picked up by Dude Man, bro. It's going to be a rotation in from the rest of the Gilded Gladiators. You're already getting kind of the sense of the dynamic over in duo. Mando, no Bastions remaining on that Tier 1 tower. Barely any damage on the Gilded Gladiators Tier 1 over in the duo lane. So it's been comfortable for Dude Man, bro, despite a couple of kills and some pressure maybe building up on the other end of the Furies. Speaking of Fury, it's been warded by the Storm. Inbound close by this time. A few more stacks on the Prophetic than he had last time around, but still could be a good target for the Xibalba Storm. But you want to stay active on this Maui. Such a setup powerhouse at times. And I think a pick that suits Inbound's play styles nicely, so that's something the Gilded Gladiators will look to play around. Over in solo, we were wondering what avenue Scary D would go with that build, Trilly. Book of Thoth into the Bancroft, so damage mindset early in this laning phase from Scary D. MaIachi has his ult, so not under any real danger. Now we'll just trade ult for ult. Now if Kyrmi was here, would be worrisome for the Vamana, but we'll go ult for ult and back away.
Yeah, Scary D is going to win this lane pretty much entirely. There's no way that the way that MaIachi has opted to build here with the Oni Hunter's garb, as Vyye takes a little bit of damage. Just that's a tablet stack. That's what we'll call that.
That's right.
Really no chance at a kill, but it's going to do some extra damage and maybe force out a relic. But Vyye was able to hold on to that one. Usually when we see the Vamana, though, it's Golden Blade first. I'm going to try and match that clear.
Right.
MaIachi said Sigil into Oni Hunters. You can cycle your abilities 3 separate times and not clear the wave with that build, so it's going to take a while for MaIachi to actually be able to fight into Scary D, but that's not why you're picking the Vamana. You don't want to try and win the 1v1. You want to rotate in and stomp on the immobile Ra or the ADC in this case later on in the game.
Oh, Charlie, it's effectively the same lane state in all 3 lanes for the Xibalba Storm right now. No Bastions on left, no Bastions on right, half of the health missing from both those towers. And then you've got half of a Bastion remaining over in mid. And you've knocked down almost 1 on the Gilded Gladiator side of the map. So just those tangibles, a good way of watching which way the waves have been pushing. Oni Fury down to half. Snoopy does not have Searing Pain back up just yet. On a Scary D rotation out of solo, it's Dingodile under pressure. We'll have to dash away on the Ganesha. Hasn't been able to use the Dharmic Pillars, and that'll be his death cry. Scary D with the first. Valo through stealth has used his ultimate. Oh no, Scary D's low, but hasn't been cleaned up, and Kyrmi finally gets the stacks building on the Rage. And it's Valo taken down by the Gladiators jungler, and an Oni Fury awaiting around the side.
Yeah, some low health bars here. MandoWarrior has just enough mana for maybe a Veil if he can get an ult tick down. Could be some steal opportunity because there's no ult, and he used it a little bit too early, so that should be a free Fury for the Gilded Gladiators, and it is. As the rotation over to Pyromancer immediately happens by the Xibalba Storm. Will they have enough time, or will Kyrmi and Snoopy even decide to walk over? Doesn't look like it, so at the very least, a free Pyromancer on the opposite side. But that cold lead for the Gilded Gladiators is still skyrocketing, 5,000 in their favor currently. And the objective play always going their way. In this case, MandoWarrior didn't have mana. Maybe if you have a full health Cliodhna who can get in the walls and get active, that fight goes a little bit better.
Yep.
But it didn't seem like the Storm really felt confident stepping up. Dingo walks up. He's level 11 with no sort of CC immunity, so he just gets CC chained, and props to Scary D for finding that ult. But that's both objectives off the map except for Fire Giant. Got to imagine fighting slows down for a bit.
Snoopy has done wonderfully over in the mid lane. I mean, he's fought around his team largely, but a 2-level lead over Vyye on the other side. Still working on that Book of Thoth. Of course, the Baba Yaga is going to beat you to that. She builds it first and gets the stacks from the passive, but you'll take an XP lead every day of the week here if you're Snoopy, and so you're going to start getting towards critical mass in the next couple of items. That's when those Searing Pains are really going to connect. You're going to put pressure on what I assume will be
how
an
far
ace
he
at
has
some
to
point.
go to hit
Yeah,
this
this
ult.
is actually a really good glimpse at what we're talking about with Mercury.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to ult towards where the minions are meeting right now, you can go beneath the tier 1 tower. MaIachi might just get soloed by Scary D, and there's a Polynomicon that'll help out with some extra damage. And you can tell Scary's feeling himself. Big smile on his face, bouncing around in his chair. MaIachi had been under threat a couple of times. Scary just simply didn't have damage. This time he does. And that'll soften up some pressure over on right, give the Gilded Gladiators an opportunity on left to knock down the tower. This may be a last-ditch effort for the Storm. If this fight goes poorly, Gilded Gladiators so far ahead, and it might get worse, and it's a stun from Dude Man Bro to peel out for Kyrmi, but MandoWarrior's got the range damage. One more throw in from Inbound on an Aegis from MandoWarrior to delay the damage in a landfall. It's on the Cliodhna, and Dude Man Bro just needs to hit the autos one more, and he's got it. And the Gladiators will trade 1 for 1, but they get a tower, they put pressure on right, and it's a good map state for the Order team.
I love that aggression from Kyrmi. That whole fight starts because MandoWarrior's beads were down. That's why he was like, hey, if this Cliodhna steps up, I'm sending the ult. Didn't quite give him that opportunity, and actually it was Valo who wanted to find that aggressive play onto Kyrmi. They're able to get that kill, but as you said, lose the tower in the process. You're trading 1 for 1, and oh yeah, Scary D gets a solo kill on the opposite side of the map. This is what I'm talking about. This build from MaIachi does not clear the wave, and all Hades does is clear waves. You're going to be taking so much of your HP. You don't have that sustain. You got to use that Vamana ult a little bit earlier, and I think MaIachi knows that now, but it looks like a rotation over to Fire Giant has begun. So far, there are no Storm members in sight.
Wow, this is a 17-minute Fire Giant for the Gilded Gladiators. They've got the confirm. They've got a Searing Pain. We'll see if Snoopy even needs to use it. He does. Probably didn't need to, but you're going to take it when you got it. And the Gladiators will get themselves a 17-minute Fire Giant. And have blown the doors off game number 1. And the Storm, Troy, this is now a glimpse back into what we were talking about earlier. The Storm have not fallen behind in kills, not by any stretch. They are right in there in the fights. But across the map, we've been talking about Bastions from the early goings of this game. Now you're talking about towers, where 2 Bastions got taken down in mid, and a bit of health taken down from the left side tower. If you're just looking at the way the waves have been pushing, it's a very simple way of understanding the direction of this game. The Storm have just been backs against it. Scary D has been able to force ult for ult. Effectively on cooldown, MaIachi's fallen 3 levels behind, 2 over in mid, 2 in the jungle. Kyrmi, despite it 1 and 2, is one of the better 1 and 2 performances you'll probably see as a Deathbringer on the back end of a Rage stack. This Mercury will start to hurt nonetheless. MandoWarrior's in the wall, a chance to steal. Will send out an ult charge, but won't take it away, and a Primal Fury now for the Gladiators. My goodness,
No.
Scary D can simply do no wrong.
He's going to get it.
He's going to get a kill on the Valo. MaIachi will trade out, but a smile on Scary D's face nonetheless. Charlie, this is a long walk towards a Game 1 win, it feels like, for the Gladiators. Just the pacing of things, and I'm not sure the Storm's composition suddenly gets that much better in the next 10, 15 minutes.
No, the second I saw Scary D dash underneath there, I knew at least 1 kill was going to come from that. If there wasn't a Brawler's Beat Stick in that second slot for Valo, Scary D gets a kill and probably gets out. So good knowing that the anti-heal definitely needed to be prioritized there by the Xibalba Storm, but they lose Fury, and they lose, I guess, 2 in the process there because Mando did eventually get chased down by Kyrmi after that Fury goes through.
Pyromancer pulled by the Gladiators. Yeah, I don't think anyone from the Storm is going to make this one interesting. So we ended up seeing the Primal Fury get confirmed, but didn't see the kill on MandoWarrior after the fact. Oh, a blink over the wall. That's nicely played by Kyrmi. And a crit or 2 assist as Scary D picks up the kill in the same breath over on the other side. So another stack built up for Kyrmi. I think he just went back and full bot a serrated edge. Mercury well underway in the build. All right, let's talk Phoenix defense here, Trelly. I mean, that's what we're starting to snowball towards. Because remember now with the Fire Giant buff timer being synced with the respawn time, the Xibalba Storm might not be able to poke their heads out of their base anytime soon.
No, doesn't seem like it. And the issue I think I see with the Storm immediately is their tanks aren't tanky.
That's a problem.
And that's a problem, right? Because Dingo went fully stacked Thieves. That's all well and good. But opted to go for the Cloak second item. We already talked about when you got the Cloak and it's not that stacked, you're not feeling that good. I got a feeling if Scary D gets to the back line, there's not going to be too much contesting him. However, they've got plenty of wave clear. I mean, Vyye and Mando are able to keep those waves pushed out. Yeah, the poly shots alone will be able to put a lot of pressure towards the tier 2 towers and in the Phoenix. Dingo uses Dark Pillars just to slow the surge towards these towers, but yeah, it's going to be bunkering down under Phoenix and sort of just hoping that the Gilded Gladiators make a misplay or a bit of an overstep.
Man, these just instant full buys from the Gilded Gladiators are just massive power spikes. With the full damage raw, keep your eyes on the Searing Pain. It's already been used. Now Kyrmi looking for the back line, a bit overzealous though on the Mercury, and that's an opening for the Xibalba Storm. Kyrmi goes in alone. Well, the rest of the Gilded Gladiators not in range.
Yeah, they're going to have to full-on retreat here. It looks like the Storm might have a little bit of wind in their sails. They're going to be able to chase anything down here. Just with Kyrmi dying, I mean, again, he went Beads and Blink. It's fairly easy to punish the Mercury in the backline. That doesn't show too much about, you know, the Gilded Gladiators slipping. I just think Mercury is one of the freer kills you can have. However, Kyrmi is going to be down for 20 seconds. What did the Storm do in the meantime? Looks like send Valo over to left lane to split push. Maybe say, hey, go hit level 20. And if that does happen, Valo's got plenty of opportunity to just straight up take someone out of the fight. Again, no Aegis on this Merc means if Valo is able to stealth into Kyrmi in the jungle, maybe you're able to find a nice one-shot opportunity, but he's a long way off level 20. He just hit 18.
Yeah, needs a bit of time. Gilded Gladiators. Got the Runic Bomb with Kyrmi, if need be, but Kyrmi is not anywhere near the Fire Giant. It's going to be a 3-man FG pull. A bit slow, but still safe for the Gilded Gladiators. MaIachi, Valo, they head back to base. That's quick work for one of the favorites to qualify into the SPL here for the Gilded Gladiators. Second Fire Giant of the game at 22 minutes. And this is maybe not the best example, Trelly, because there is a bit of delay between Fire Giant dropping off and the Gladiators picking it up just now. But I was talking to Neil a bit about the differences, right? It's a 4-minute FG timer, and then it respawns as the buff is falling off. So there's not that 1-minute window of setup time, really, for both teams. And Neil talked a lot about how, you know, the vision battle becomes so important and stifling, really, for the team that's in the lead, the team that's able to cycle the Fire Giants, basically. Look at ward coverage on right. The Storm were just simply not able to step out. You don't know if the Gladiators are on FG because you don't have wards there. They might be in your jungle trying to bait you out. There's no time where you know that Fire Giant's not up and under threat, and it keeps you forced into your base. This will be objectives across the map. I'm wondering now, Trelly, maybe the only opening opportunities for the Storm are Mercury overextension 4v5 style of fights for the Storm.
Certainly could be, and I think Scary D, if enough anti-heals on the Hades, he could die as well, but this is a smart call by the Storm. Immediately get over here. Teleport channel by MaIachi. They want to try and defend this as well as you can. And with Kyrmi's beats down for 24 seconds, I imagine Valo feels just fine trying to take that 1v1 in mid if Kyrmi does try to split push. But now left Phoenix being looked at, and those poly shots are starting to add up.
Dude-Man Bro's done really good damage this game while our eyes have been focused elsewhere. This Ishtar still topping the damage charts, has really overtaken Scary D in the last couple of minutes. Demonic Blade adding a crit or two, but Scary D tired of waiting. He'll go forward and pull in 2 with the Pillars of Agony, and the Dharmic Pillars around the Hades. The Scary D will have to dash out. Valo, though, has found the opening thread, and it's on to Scary D. And Doom-Man Bro left to the Wolves, but Snoopy and Doom-Man Bro flip it around. Kyrmi on the reinitiation keeps his carries on the map. In the Storm, they had a thread of hope, but it was dashed to the wayside, and the Gladiators, they've dominated game 1, and they've done it in such clean fashion. Make it a clean 10, maybe 11 if Valo tries to get in and defend, but this is going to game 1 win for the Gilded Gladiators.
Yeah, this Titan will drop down eventually. Snoopy getting credit for that one, and we see this so much in games where a team is down. They think they've got a pretty good shot at defending their Phoenix. They get a pick, and then they overextend.
Yeah, they do too much.
You don't have to run that far. Truth is, you only get that kill because Phoenix does a good portion of the work. If you just stay underneath and defend a bit longer, maybe you're able to hit some more power spikes. But let's be honest, that game was all in the hands of the Gilded Gladiators. Yep. There were some picks here and there, but farm, there was never a contention. Objective-wise, there was never a contention. The Gilded Gladiators just played that one cleaner.
I mean, I love Valo early in this game, taking advantage of the misstep from Kyrmi, trying to battle up against the Loki early. That fight goes handedly in favor of the Xibalba Storm. But Valo's just not able to capitalize and push that forward. Eventually,
right.
Scary just starts taking over the solo lane. Duo lane feels comfortable. And I think you word it really nicely early in that game, Trelly, where it's you know, you might be even in kills, but it's all of the space between those intermittent skirmishes that is just building up this massive gold lead for the Gilded Gladiators. Game 1 to the Gilded Gladiators. We'll see if they can repeat in game 2 right after this.
We played Halo and we lay low in our basement until the sun began to rise. We would go to school but not learn too much, cause it's hard to read when you've got tired eyes. Months go by, the time it flies, past the days that we drink Kool-Aid in the summertime. Years go by, the time it flies, past the days that we drink Kool-Aid in the summertime. that they still by my side. Friends are like stars, cause no matter how far, when it's dark outside, they will be your light. We played Halo, and we'd lay low in our basement until the sun began to rise. We would go to school, but not learn too much, cause it's hard to read when you've got tired eyes. Months go by, the time it flies, past the days that we drank Kool-Aid in the summertime. Years go by, the time it flies, past the days that we drank Kool-Aid in the summertime.
You have habits just like me. Talk too much with strangers. Get way too serious around family. And I don't have any wishes, but when I kiss you, our lips fit well. And I don't have expectations, but when I daydream, I fall asleep, and our hands melt. It started out as teasing, but I had deeper meaning when I touched your chest. Now I don't know how to act, but if I did, and I don't have any wishes, but when I kiss you, our lips fit well, and I don't have expectations, but when I
Well, our second best of three of the day, game number one, goes over to the Gilded Gladiators. We're able to find their success, what mostly felt like through macro style of play here in game number one up against their opposition in the Xibalba Storm. A lot of early game scrapping from the Storm, finding a couple of early picks, one onto Kyrmi specifically, a first blood solo kill for Valo, and then rotating over and finding one into the duo lane. But it just feels like this is kind of the same conversation we have a lot of the time, Mifflin, where it's an SPL team. They know how to do SPL caliber farming up against these SCC teams who don't have that same level of practice, and that really feels that's where it won out for the Gladiators in this first game.
But I was almost certain that that style of play was eliminated by Season 10, because it feels like it is so difficult to just win out on macro farm. There's so much contestable farm now that I thought the Gold Fury Pyromancer trade that we become so accustomed to would essentially just be repeated on a smaller scale on the map. Oh, you want to group up for left mid camps? Well, right mid camps are a legitimate 15-second walk away, so, you know, the other team would just grab that. Instead, though, somehow the Gladiators control all the macro, literally every single bit of it. They Camelot Kingsdom. They regular season Camelot Kingsdom, and we haven't seen that yet. We would maybe expect that from the other SPL caliber teams that are in the tournament, but even then, they were dragged into a much scrappier style of play. Just so surprising to see, especially considering the players that are on the Gladiators. These aren't hang back, farm, and just show up ahead type players. These are, I want to earn my money by taking it out of my enemy's pockets, but somehow, some way, they've adapted their play, and they look good for it. That was a very convincing win that starts off shaky, but at no point was I thinking to myself, yeah, the Storm got this one, because every time I looked up, sure, even at the 2-0 start, the Gladiators were, at worst case, like 300 gold down.
Yeah, I think by the time those first 2 kills had ended, it was nearly 3,000 gold up for the Gladiators. I looked down to finish my lunch, I look back up, and now it's 6,000 gold, and then I turn away to look at something else. I look back, and now we're at 8,000, 9,000 gold, and
got
climbing
fire
by that point, and a fire giant. Gilded Gladiators really just played the map well in game 1, but for Picks and Bans in game number 2, we still see some of that same respect that we saw the Gladiators from that first one there, though. Throwing a Zeus in the mix kind of throws me off for the Bans, but then the Thor and the Tiamat that we saw repeated from game number 1 now here in game 2. Opposite side, Merlin, Freya, and the Naja banned away by the Storm for a first pick Ymir. Something we haven't seen in a while for Dingodile has been a heavy priority pick in the support role for him.
Yeah, but Ymir, I feel like maybe gets an inherent nerf on the Season 10 map because the jungle is so much more winding. You're not locking down entire corridors anymore. Sure, you'll lock down one entryway to a corridor, but where there was one previously, there's now 2 or 3 for any given escape path. Still certainly valuable. A wall will never be a bad pickup. But grabbing your Ymir this early in the draft, always a double-edged sword. When he's top of the priority list, sure, it makes sense, but now with so many Guardians, so viable, getting a largely immobile pick this early on could open the door for the Gladiators just to look for exposed pick style selections, things that can just drop on them and make it really difficult to farm the map early on. Even Olorun, to a certain extent, sure, doesn't have a great matchup into the wall directly, but dilate Ymir's time field, and all of a sudden, what's he going to do? Start charging shards of ice? I don't think they're too concerned about it.
So with Ymir, immediate Maui, Olorun response for the Gilded Gladiators. And something that we haven't seen, I don't think at all this tournament, has been a top 3 Olorun pick. He's either been banned away or been completely ignored as far as the picks and bans are concerned. So seeing one of our first Olorun matchups. Now we're going to see how maybe the Storm answer to it, because I mean, it's something that we talked about yesterday where when you see an Olorun pick, some of the answers in the past have been things like the Guan Yu, the Cthulhu, and even Camazotz and Vamana, notably as well, something that MaIachi was already playing. Do you think that maybe incentivizes MaIachi to go towards another pick just like that?
Man, it's been so long since Olorun was meta, I'd completely forgotten that Vamana was a counter selection back when Vamana was bad. So I think you kind of nailed it here.
Oh, I think
a
you nailed
great
it too.
pickup into this Olorun. You don't have the direct answer. You can't just sunder an HP shield from Vamana. You can't just onk it because it is slowly building. I mean, that he's always going to find value and can overheal if he decides to initiate the fight with his ultimate. So Colossal Fury, just a massively powerful tool that completely invalidates a portion of the Gladiators team fight. Sanctified Fields takes a massive, massive nerf into this composition from the Storm. Not just Vamana, Camazotz as well can operate similarly, not at the same level, not quite as annoying. It's just 3 swoops with the bat out of hell, but still, the ability to just say, hey, I don't feel like fighting you anymore, I'm going to get out, very valuable for the Storm.
And in response to that, Gladiators go back to Hades for Scaredy. Something that we questioned in game number 1 is how good is Hades with this current style of play that Season 10 has developed into? Is it, you know, the warrior mitigations,
Seems
the
all right.
Guardians that rush the tablet early on? Seems like not a whole lot of difference for Scaredy. I believe I looked at 1.3-1 on the Hades as the highest kill leader for his team, at least to start out game 1. We'll get running back in the second of those games. Now as we jump into the second wave of bans, Assassin's the name of the game, as only one has been picked up for the Storm. Still question if this Camazotz will be jungle or in the duo lane, but with all the bans that have been allocated now towards what could be MandoWarrior, maybe we see that Camazotz still have a little bit of extra flexibility. Or maybe we see something new from Mando. It's Wheelish, Loki, Cliodhna, and Mercury all banned out.
I mean, he still has his entire solo god pool that he'd been developing over the last 3 years that he could try and dip into here, but I think there's going to come a point, if MandoWarrior wants to stick to the ADC role, where we got to see some of the standards. We need to see something that can bring ranged
Shall
auto
we get
attacks
to
that
it
can help
then?
you out in siege situations or base defense situations. Assassin's so good at fighting in neutral territory. If the fight's happening around the fire giant, you love having an assassin on your team. If you're just skirmishing anywhere in the jungle, you love having an assassin. If you're able to split push and you're in that kind of position, you love having an assassin. But the second the 5-on-5 stack happens, having just a little bit more range DPS, some artillery damage can be so valuable. If you're trying to end a game, breaking the base, Hunter's some of the best to do it. As of now, I think we've strayed away. That's gotta be Camazotz for the lane and Thanatos for the jungle.
Now, notably, right before the set started, MandoWarrior did tweet out, just remember, guys, I'm a solo laner. So it seems that he's going to stick to his solo lane tendencies
Seems
with
like it.
either the Kama or the Thanatos, whichever he elects to go for himself. Baba Yaga once more for the mid laner of the Xibalba Storms. We'll get to see Vyye pilot this pick once again. Seems that this is now his go-to when the Tiamat is banned away. I'm not sure if the Zeus was maybe a respect ban added in there. But now we throw a Neith into the mix. Imagine maybe this one goes over to mid lane for Snoopy, unless you're wanting to put Olorun over in the mid lane in its place.
It's really difficult to gank mid nowadays. That lane is so small when both tier 1 towers are up that the argument of put Olorun in the duo because that's the harder lane to gank, still probably slightly true, but we've seen a lot of emphasis from junglers towards duo, whereas mid laners for the most part have been allowed to free farm for the first 10 or so levels. I think I would still prefer to have Neith in mid. That global presence gets a little bit of additional value when it's on the center of the map, takes a little bit less travel time to get to either side lane. Olorun will still be pretty far away from the majority of the action, assuming that it isn't happening in the duo lane. So I think you're right to say that this is likely for Snoopy in mid. Ability-based hunters feel pretty good right now. Have the ability to find some of that burst. Make it difficult for Thanatos to want to dunk, backflip, very quick active frames because you can avoid the hovering death pretty consistently. I like this draft from the Gladiators. Again, slightly off-kilter, slightly different from what we've seen previously, but still, when you look at each of these picks individually, they fit the god pool and style of each of their players.
Now, kind of taking a look back at the Xibalba Storm, this is still running similar style that they were doing in their previous set, even in game number 1. Problem is when I look at this composition, if I see Vamana, I look at late game. I look at Baba Yaga, I think late game. Early game Thana and Camazotz are there to maybe try to help alleviate some of that. And that's kind of where they fell apart in game number 1, was that early game. The macro farm just went handily to the Gilded Gladiators. Do you think that this composition by the Storm can kind of help them weather through and be able to make it towards that mid-late game?
I think so. Camazotz and Thanatos, as you said, very strong early on. Ymir as well, very powerful in the early game. That Frostbite passive just means he's dealing more damage than the majority of other tanks in the game. So as those three for your core throughout the early, you feel pretty confident for the most part. Vamana gets left alone on an island, and who's killing a Vamana? Just about nobody. You're not really concerned about him losing out on too much pressure. Probably will have his wave pushed in pretty consistently. But as far as actually dying, I think very unlikely. Baba Yaga, sure, you might be able to shut her down, but still a standard leap, long range damage to deal with the wave, and CC immunity to the ultimate as well as an HP shield. So if the Storm want to, they can just survive the early game, but I think therein lies the issue. There were points in the previous match where they were just surviving or even thriving in kills. It was controlling the farm. That's where they need to make their adjustment.
Well, we'll see if the Xibalba Storm can make that adjustment. Will they drop down to the loser's bracket or extend us to game number 3? To find out, we got to jump in to game number 2.
Adjustment's got to be swift and immediate if you're the Xibalba Storm, because the Gilded Gladiators ran you off the map in game number 1. It wasn't even all that much kill pressure. There was a bit of that, but playing the map simply more effectively were the Gilded Gladiators. And Trelly, there have been some crazy changes to the composition of the Gladiators. One thing that's remained the same is Scary D. He's on this Hades this time around, up against MaIachi again. And so let's start there. You think the Storm have better opportunities to help out MaIachi in this lane, or are we just looking at a repeat of game 1?
Well, I have seen one big difference maker so far in the build, and it is that MaIachi has not opted to start that tier 1, I guess last time it was Oni Hunter's garb, which means he gets more potions, and he can decide, hey, I can go Golden Blade and actually clear the wave this time around. That's what I'm hoping. Yeah, you put some extra gold in to make sure that teleport is upgraded. I suppose he wants to get back quicker.
Yeah.
And also, if he stays in lane long enough to just buy full Golden Blade, he could. But again, last time he went Oni Hunter's Garb, got completely pushed in, ended up getting soloed. you need a little help clearing the wave if your starter item is not going to provide damage to the wave. That's the way I see it. And MaIachi, I'm assuming, just learned that last game and will implement that this time around. If not, I expect to see a lot of what we just saw. I mean, just Scary D getting the better end of those traits throughout the entirety of the early game.
Could be. Largely then laying on the junglers. Valo on the Thanatos here in game 2. I'll put Kyrmi over on the Susano. And it was a Mercury for Kyrmi. Needed some time to scale up. Totally different jungle matchup here, Trelly. Do you like the power curve of one or the other? If we're assuming we might get a jungle skirmish or two, who are you putting your chips on?
This one's tough because I think that Kyrmi has a lot of ways to outplay Valo in this regard. Susano is just so mobile, whereas Thanatos needs to hit abilities. Dingo taking
nice
a lot
by
of
Inbowned.
damage here. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but now Dingo could be running for his life here.
Yeah,
A couple
Dingo's in
auto
trouble.
attacks. He could die for sure.
Inbound's going to have hook. Inbound doesn't need a hook, and that is a simple first blood from the Gilded Gladiators. I mean, rule 1, if you're trying to stem the bleeding of a smackdown of a game 1, let's not give up a first blood at level 2 over in duo lane.
And it was a smackdown.
It was a smackdown.
Yep.
I was wondering if the junglers would scrap here. Like to look at Kyrmi on the Susano. Man, are you going to lose? I mean, you're maybe one wave away from losing this Bastion. Dude, man, bro, loves pushing those advantages. Big difference here for the Gilded Gladiators. Kyrmi was on Raw, or Snoopy rather, was on Raw in game number 1. Still has a snipe. It's a bit different. He's on the Neith this time around. Gone Bluestone. So that World Weaver Trelly, good map-wide setup for the Gilded Gladiators if they're trying to spread things out.
Yep, certainly could be used to just, I would say, if Kyrmi ever wants to take the 1v1 with Valo to say, hey, charge it up, I'm going to look for him in the jungle. You provide that extra CC. I'm going to try to 100-0 this Thanatos before he even gets a chance to try and hit me with a Death Scythe or go up into that hovering death. Certainly could be possible, but now the duo lane is looking rough. I mean, Dingo did not start a survivability relic. He's got Blink. As Valo's sitting here waiting to see if Scary T will make a dash on this wave. Looks like decided he probably will not and will just take the cooldown buff in return.
Yep.
But this duo lane's going to have some problems. I mean, it takes a while before Mando's able to clear the wave by himself, so Dingo has to step up. And when he does, he comes out looking like this, about half health pretty much every time.
Bastion dropped on the left side of the left lane for the Gilded Gladiators. A little infusion of gold. Again, more an indicator of the way that the laning phase has gone. Vyye back on the Baba Yaga this game, Trelly. Could go into Book of Thoth early. You're going to get that stacked up nicely. Of course, takes a bit longer, to a standard rate to stack up the tablet on the Baba Yaga. And so, despite the game being somewhat quick, Vyye was really never able to get to critical mass on the Baba Yaga. Scary D plus Kyrmi, that equals blue buff invade. And MaIachi down, I mean, one sliver away from red HP with no mana. And Valo was hovering over on left. Gladiators again, finding these openings. 1,000 gold lead early just on a blue buff invade and some neutral farm.
Yep, and we saw the reason MaIachi can't even go over to try and defend is because it takes him so long to clear the wave. Wouldn't you guess it? Teleports in and just buys tier 1 Oni Hunter's Garb, so.
Hey, but we got the teleport upgraded. We could do it a bit more often.
He can do it a bit more often, and hopefully that means his HP stays a little bit higher, but it is not going to help. That was the Umbrella Ring, the 2, it's just, it takes so long to clear that wave, whereas Scary D can get all the farm in the world, but again, MaIachi knew this, and I'm assuming he is.
This is a choice.
Yeah, this was a choice. He will be rotating in a level or 2 behind, and he has accepted that. And if that's the case, then it seems the Xibalba Storm have changed up their game plan a bit.
Right.
We'll have to see how that works out for him.
Have to adapt the team fight almost entirely. Now, a pick, Trelly, that, I don't know, I mean, it's been prioritized a bit in picks and bans. The Olorun and all the conversations about magical AD carries and what do you play over in the duo lane. We've seen some Chronos talked about. Freya has probably been the favorite, the magical AD carries. Olorun has been banned out once or twice. And, of course, very strong, can itemize into the rings and make use of the arrow start. I'll hold that thought as Scary D uses.
He's got to die.
Was the
here.
last bit of his mana on his ultimate, but he's able to dash away, and then a World Weaver from mid, and Scary D, no, he does not die.
What?
And a little assistance from Snoopy will just help Scary D back away.
So, Scary D had 1 bit of mana to use 1 ability, and Valo decided to blink Scythe, miss that, and then use the Soul Reap and miss that, and then give up on the gank entirely. I don't know. It seemed a bit rushed.
At some point, you got to say, you know what? I'm not hitting anything. Let's go again in a moment.
No,
you know?
I agree with giving up with the gank, but he didn't have to blink.
Yeah.
He didn't have to throw that scythe. He could have blinked and just stood there, and Scaredy would have dashed, and then he could have lined it up perfectly, but he tried to rush that one. Got a little bit overzealous. That was not a rushed gank by any means. Scaredy was as far up as you can get without touching the tower line. And a little bit unfortunate that one goes awry.
I'll try. I don't love updating gold all that often, but it's been about 2 minutes, and the gold lead is doubled now to 2,000 for the Gilded Gladiators. Good kill opportunity here on Inbound, who's already used the solar swing, but the damage isn't enough just yet. Firebolt's through, and Valo is able to end up finding the kill column despite a dropped kill in solo just a moment ago. And Inbound, without that escapability on the Maui, has to leave. Dude, man, bro, under pressure here. He drops the Sanctified Field. Oh, no! As soon as it goes right for Valo, it immediately goes wrong. MandoWarrior didn't have bat out of hell. Dude, man, bro's got ult. And
Yeah.
beads.
Yeah.
And lives.
Yep.
And when it goes great for the Storm, suddenly swept away on the other side.
You know, and I gave Valo the credit last game of saying, you know, well, as we see Kyrmi get a free kill.
This is
because-
starting to get messy, Trelly, and I think that's scary for the. I mean, maybe you need it to be somewhat messy if you're the Storm, scrappy. You know, try to get the Gilded Gladiators, who are clearly a very clean team, uncomfortable. But it's not messy in the right way for the Xibalba Storm. It's messy in the slightly mistakey type of way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There was no reason to make any of the plays that I've seen so far. Like I said in game number 1, you know, Valo wins that 1v1 versus Kyrmi every single time.
Yep.
You know, Loki just outright beats Merc in that 1v1. In this case, you know Olorun has ult, has beads, and you yourself as a Thanatos don't have beads. You're getting slow motioned under the tower. That never works out. I think Valo got a little bit excited after the first kill, tried to chain it into, you know, a multiple thing. A little bit overzealous and didn't quite work out. Again, this time around, Scaredy's ult is down. Maybe this gank works out better.
Dashes
Hold
away.
that scythe this time until you get the setup. There it is.
There it
Simple
is.
as that.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Valo back in the kill column after what was a good and then bad chain of events over on left. And at least, you know, one box getting checked here by the Storm, where it is a one-level lead for Scary D. It's not gotten completely out of control. MandoWarrior, Dude Man Bro scrapping out a bit, but that's all the damage down for Mando. Sanctified Field close to coming back up.
No beads, no ult.
Doesn't have beads, you're right. Mando does have Blink, but just finishes up Transcendence. Only a few stacks on that, where Telkine's picked up for Dude Man Bro. Something in the shield category after the fact there as well. Maybe sensing most of the threat is going to be from physical carries. No stun from the Thanatos, but there's going to be one from Neith. On to Valo. Kyrmi not in range to follow up. Dude Man Bro uses Sanctified Field. It's where Bat Out of Hell can really make its money. Floating through that ultimate in the Xibalba Storm. Now they're starting to get scrappy and messy in the right ways. They're catching out the Gilded Gladiators. And they sent Dude Man Bro back to base.
Yeah, that's a great call. I mean, they were waiting over in duo lane for so long. You could see it written on the walls. Mando and Dingo wanted to double blink onto that Olorun, but Inbound sticks around and says, hey, I'm keeping this guy alive at least for a little bit. Once the fight at the shield buff happens, though, that's when they were able to actually find that blink from Dingodile in this case, and a weak Olorun is not going to live. But Dude Man Bro recognizes this and says, hey, I'm going to be taking a lot of physical damage this game. I'm going Berserker Shield.
Yep.
It still feels wrong that magical ADCs can build it. And it looks weird because it was
It
a
is gonna
physical
look very
item
strange,
last
right?
season,
Yep.
but it gives a lot of different stats.
Ooh,
And
nice.
a beautiful blink there by Mando. Sees that gank coming. Once that finishes up, Dude Man Bro's going to have a much easier time actually scrapping up against Mando. But until then, what are the Gladiators doing in the jungle? They're going to invade this purple buff. I was thinking they were looking towards gold, but they just want a little bit of extra farm. Good little gank there by Kyrmi. Not going to net the kill. That's a blink and a purple buff.
Bad news for the Xibalba Storm is nothing's gotten better. It just hasn't gotten worse. So maybe that's good news, given the pace of the game. This is going to get a bit worse. The Gilded Gladiators will get what looks like the first tower of the game over in duo, and there's a Gold Fury waiting. So, I mean, it's been what? If a team is feeling comfortable, we've seen Gold Fury pulls at 6, 7, 8 minutes into the game. We're about to get to 10. The Gladiators are feeling comfortable. They've got about a level and a half lead in mid for Snoopy, who's fully stacked up the Transcendence. MandoWarrior at 23 stacks. Sanctified Field Trail, you got to imagine comfortable at fighting in these jungle fights. Drape it over the team fight and see what you can get done. Wonder if the Gilded Gladiators may be starting to feel confident for an early objective.
Yeah, Yeah, last game it was the 7-minute Fury, and I think the lead was even smaller gold-wise than this one. But map state was looking clean at
dashed.
this point.
He doesn't have ult. That's a stun onto Scary D, but dodges out a bit of the return damage. World Weaver makes its way in, but blocked by MaIachi, and Scary D sends out a silence.
Scythe?
And Scythe not needed because MaIachi's got the auto. I asked you early in the game, do you think the Xibalba Storm have answers for what Scary D was able to do in game 1? We've now seen the answer is yes, and it's just gank him repeatedly. Vyye, though, takes a big burst from Snoopy. Has to get out. Inbound was close. Inbound had landfall. Just a house used by Vyye. It's already a more comfortable laning phase here, Trelly, for MaIachi. It's all the assistance of Valo over on right.
And that's going to help out. But now Snoopy gets some assistance from Inbound and is trying to put some damage into this Tier 1 tower. Remember, Vyye sitting on a lot of gold. That was just tablet and Tier 1 book, only into Book of Souls. So Snoopy has quite the lead itemization-wise on this Neith in the mid lane. You got fully stacked Transcendence, Jotuns going into what you can only assume is Crusher or Brawlers if you net yourself some more anti-heal. Doesn't seem like this Baba Yaga is going to be able to step up anytime soon. Just so much damage coming from the Neith.
No, it's the other way around. I'll hold this thought. Valo's up in the air. Snoopy has beads.
Ooh, pre-Aegis.
Uses the Aegis very early. Beads there after the fact. Good peel from Inbound as a freeze through from Dingodile. But Kyrmi's got a double pull on the backside of mid lane. Typhoon is up and it gets the knock-up. But Dingodile trades out. And it looks like Vyye actually hit with the last bit of that Typhoon. And the rest of the Xibalba Storm have left this mid lane engagement, and it's all down to the damage connecting onto Dingodile. One more auto from Snoopy will do it. Ends up being 2 for 1, and a good trade for the Gladiators.
That was a great mystical Lua into the backflip as well for Snoopy to close gap there. Scary D was on the way, just in case they couldn't close that gap. Had the blink available and could have helped out on the dive. But I think once that ult doesn't connect and Bobby gets the landfall ult, Inbound takes that ult away, makes sure that Valo actually can't close gap onto Snoopy. That fight went better than it should have. The fact that the Xibalba Storm even got a kill there was big because I think they used a lot. Kyrmi comes in, hits a massive Typhoon, is able to confirm that kill onto Vyye, and then the chase down afterwards. Just means that once again, this Neith is climbing even further ahead. Level 14 now, 2 levels. They've got plenty of ability damage, and because Valo hasn't went for that Aegis, as most junglers don't, you're going to be feeling the wrath of that ult pretty much every time it's channeled on you.
Yeah, but think about where the Gilded Gladiators have continued to make their money. I mean, they knocked down a tower on left, knocked down a tower over in mid, no more Bastions on right, half HP remaining on the solo lane tower. Really, the only difference from game 1 to game 2 is that Gold Fury has stood for a little bit longer. Valo's still a threat on the map, something you have to be aware of. Kyrmi learned that over in mid. Without beads, without blink for a little bit of time. It's still going to be Scary D under pressure. That's some burst onto Scary D, but the dash saved this time. Has to dodge out the damage from Valo. Oh no, Valo! He's done too much, and in the 2v1, Scary D has flipped it and might actually kill off both. Kyrmi is here to hope to secure something. MaIachi will scurry away. But Scary D, with the assistance of Snoopy and a little bit of mental game from Kyrmi around the wall, flips the fight. Unfortunately, all of that work, it seems like Valo's done on right. Still has Scary D in a really strong spot.
Yeah, if Valo had a Brawler Speed Stick or a little bit more CDR, maybe that Scythe comes through and confirms that kill. But now Pyromancer started up by the Gladiators, almost down. And they will be able to confirm that one. Vyye was close by and went for a steal opportunity. Was not able to find it. But it looks like they still want to get aggressive here onto Snoopy.
Good target.
He's tanky, though. He's taking a lot of HP in this case.
Double
And it looks like
knockback.
that's all they got.
Yeah, MaIachi, not much more in there. Snoopy's beads and Aegis back up in 5 seconds. And so that was literally the last opportunity until they're used again for Dingodile to find a relatively clean initiation onto Snoopy. Doesn't matter. Dude Man Bro finishes up that Berserker's tier 2 of the next ring. Brawling out a bit more effectively against MandoWarrior now. Do like this from the Storm, though. On time to the objective. They realize that if it gets left alone for too long, the Gilded Gladiators certainly have enough to pull it. And they've got that Runic Bomb, if need be. Inbound would love to get a hook onto MandoWarrior here. The tier 1 is long since fallen. However, Inbound's got to be careful of doing too much. The rest of the Gilded Gladiators, except for Dude Man Bro, have backed away. Now, It's 4 members of the Xibalba Storm collapsing in towards the Maui. Will Solar swing away, stun on a dude man, bro, but a Sanctified Field is in for the answer, and it's all too simple for Kyrmi, who typhoons 1, teleports to 2, and Snoopy finishes the kill. But all of this is Kyrmi's damage, and dude man, bro, helping. Double for the Susano. MandoWarrior drops in trade, and a 4-kill swing for the Gladiators, while Scary D proxies some farm on right.
Scary D chased MaIachi all the way to Phoenix. It's as easy as a fight
We've
can
arrived
get
at
in
the
that
same
case.
conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those situations where what's the goal of an Olorun? Try and get melee characters in the middle of your ult. Valo is ulting in with no beads, getting in the center of the Olorun, saying, hey, I want to be inside that ult. I understand the call was, hey, let's see if we can get some relics down. Maybe we can kill off this. Did not work out, and now Tier 2 will drop. Snoopy, that was calculated. He had the numbers written down next to him. He knew he was going to be lived there. And that's plenty of gold in the pockets of the Gilded Gladiators. They're up 11K just about. Doesn't seem like they're going to be stopping anytime soon. They don't have much to stand on, the Storm that is. They have a 1-0 Vamana, I suppose, but still down 2 levels, as you would expect.
I mean, they're down 10K in gold. That's one thing, you know, I referenced a couple times early in the game where nothing had happened and it was a 1,000 lead. 2 minutes later, it was 2,000. Storm found a couple of fights. Valo finally started to hit pay dirt on Scary D on right. And all that did was stabilize the goal. It just didn't move much. Eventually, the Gladiators cleaned up some of their play. And again, have arrived at the same conclusion nonetheless.
It's a big arrow.
It's a big arrow. It'll stun out MandoWarrior, but Bet Out of Hell will swoop far enough away. He'll be okay. I wonder what this tells us, though, about the Gilded Gladiators, because if we're thinking, all right, Warg's on name recognition and talent, and this Gladiators team has plenty of it, don't you worry, but we're assuming that team goes through. We're considering it a failing if the Wargs somehow don't qualify into the SPL. Then there's sort of this race for that second spot in a lot of players' minds and a lot of fans' minds. The Gilded Gladiators get the shout-out from a couple of us. I wonder if this is maybe some of the most clean Smite gameplay we've seen, though. The Wargs had a really, really nice set to start off our day. The Gladiators doing so as well. All this to say, Trelly, the battle on Saturday and Sunday for the last couple of spots in the SPL really going to heat up. All these teams that are expected to be in there and battling have all looked very, very good so far here this weekend, Gladiators included. They are likely on their way to a 2-0 set win, unless Snoopy and Inbound somehow end up getting traded out here. That's not that much damage from Vyye. Snoopy takes a bit of extra burst. We'll get out just fine. Seems like a fire giant, 17 minutes over the horizon. Same thing happened in game 1.
Yeah, this was wishful. The build was wishful thinking from Vyye. Going tablet into Book of Thoth into Warlocks, like the triple stack, I think is a little much.
Where you go tablet first,
right?
Because you got to build them up on your own.
No, I like the tablet. Into Book of Thoth, love that. But into another stacking item, like you're hoping this game goes what, another 15 minutes without you needing to do damage, I would imagine.
Yeah, we're on Fire Giant 5.
Yeah, I'm thinking that needed to be a
now.
Divine Ruin or a Soul Gem. Something that is cheaper and gets online a little bit earlier. In this case, Warlocks is going to take a while before you're getting that value, even with Baba passive. And you need Fire Giant damage, or I guess defense for the Fire Giant right now. Right. You don't have time to sit in lane. And it looks like they're going to step up for a soft defense. Here comes Mando and Vyye. But Scary D's on zone duty, and they're immediately going to run away.
Yeah, Runic Bomb for Kyrmi, but Secure is still there for the Gilded Gladiators. No real big burst opportunity from either team, unless you consider some of the fire bolts from Vyye on the Baba Yaga. None of it needed, though. And the Gilded Gladiators, I think in game 1, Trelly got like a 16, 17, 18-minute Fire Giant. Same thing here in game 2. This is a team, you know, we saw Inbound. He walked into the studio earlier on today. Big smile on his
All
face.
smiles.
Player feeling confident in himself. Crocs were in comfort mode, though. They weren't in sport mode at the moment, or at the time.
He did say he was going to put him in sport mode
Okay,
later.
he did. So we're thinking the straps are back now.
Yep.
They're looking like it.
I saw the confidence. He even asked us what our plans are for first week of SPL when he joins us. No, sure. He didn't say
Look,
that.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, yeah, every team has a shot. It's the beauty of this tournament. Who knows what happens in the lower bracket and the upper bracket. Some of these top teams are going to have to lose at some point, and they're going to drop down. Teams can go on a run. It's a race. There's a lot of teams here that can make some noise, and only 2 spots in the Smite Pro League remain. And so there are a lot of notes being taken. How do the Wargs look earlier on today? They look great. They look very clean. How do the Gladiators look against their opponents? Same thing. Same outcome. They look great. Clean. just like the initiation onto Vyye. These might be the closing moments of game 1. We are just reaching 20 minutes. Another kill dropped, and it's Dingodile this time. Mando pulled back by Kyrmi. Up and over goes Valo, but he's gone in alone. And a double for Snoopy. Goodbye, right side Phoenix. And Trelly, I'm thinking goodbye game 2 and goodbye set. Gladiators' first look is a clean one.
Yeah, they weren't really able to find any legs to stand on in game number 2 here. The Xibalba Storm. They found some decent ganks over in right lane, but that was pretty much it. The Gladiators play a clinical brand of Smite off the back of some nice ganks from Kyrmi on the Susano, as well as Scary D still getting online. Doesn't matter how much you try and gank that solo lane, how much you're going to put the Hades down. He's still going to rotate in levels ahead, and no one really had the build to deal with it. Again, not much anti-heal. We saw 3 items from Vyye. The Baba Yaga just got Warlocks online.
Yep.
She wasn't going to be chunking for another 8 minutes or so.
Look at Scary. He's bouncing around in the player booth right now. It's a player who's feeling confident, and all that Scary's gone through in his career as well. I mean, think back to a couple years ago, not in the SPL, rejoins the SPL last year, far from the year that Scary would have hoped for, had some great moments, but never found that consistency. The roster that he had around him never found that consistency. Now hoping to make it back in. So you start off your Smite competitive year by trying to win your job back, basically. I think showing up, especially after weeks of what we imagine are anticipation, you get notified, your team is going to have to go through the play-ins, and finally showing up and playing and having it be that clean, got to feel great for the Gilded Gladiators. It's 2-0 and one of the cleanest sets we've had so far this weekend. That's it for Trelly and I on the desk. We'll take it from here.
Yeah, I think clean is a very nice word to use for this matchup here for the Gilded Gladiators. Pretty dominant game number 1 where it was purely macro play that was winning out, at least in the early mid stages. This time the kills roll through a little bit faster though, Mifflin. We see Kyrmi get off to a great start. It wasn't until about the mid game that we see Snoopy really start to rev up through. It just felt like this double assassin comp, it can only work so much once the teams have dialed it in. It's something that we talked about with some of the players for this team when it was players like on the Anansi Weavers, where they're doing these weird things and it's working right out the gate. But once you give it a couple of sets, a couple of weeks through, these weird styles of plays get figured out and eventually able to get picked apart.
Yeah, I mean, this game, I think a little bit different in pacing in that it was a lot of unforced errors that net the Gilded Gladiators their massive lead. I'm thinking about that Thanatos dunk into the tower, and it's just an easy pickup for DMB. I'm thinking about a failed gank in the soul lane, and all of a sudden now you've got Scary D, who is massive on a Hades, right? It's these small issues where you're getting a little bit overactive. Even this first blood just feels like was so avoidable had he pathed literally just towards his own tower or anywhere else, then into the jungle and then back into the enemies, right? There's just a couple of nervous plays, I think, cost them pretty massively here. But as far as I'm concerned, even looking outside of this, the Gilded Gladiators have looked like the cleanest team so far. They're simply getting more farm on map. Their macro is clean, their small wins are bigger than other people's small wins, and it seems as if they've got themselves a pretty solid identity. This game, more so than any other so far this weekend, I think dictated by individual play though. Game 1 was team play and macro. Game 2, they just won out in every fight that came their way, be it a 1v1, a 2v2, or a 3v3.
If I'm not mistaken, Game 2 being, I believe, the fastest game of the weekend so far at just over 20 minutes of play as they were pushing up in towards the throne room. Gilded Gladiators dominating the number 10 seed Xibalba Storm. Now, it's not over for the Storm. The Storm do still move on, at least into the losers bracket. We'll have a much more difficult path now to have a chance to qualify in towards the Smite Pro League now for that team and everybody in the losers bracket, which we'll see some more of those teams a little bit later on today. There's no more second chances. This is their second and final chance. A lose in the losers bracket means you go home. So for teams like the Gladiators, like the Warriors, the ones who have been staying on the winners bracket, their path a little bit easier and they've got a little bit more leeway to play with.
Yeah, I think so. You really want to keep your head above water for as long as possible in tournaments like this. The winner's bracket, of course, less games, feels great. You show less of your strategies as the event goes on, and it is so comforting as a player. I can't speak to it. I never had it. It's not a privilege I had. This double limp thing's like new to me, but I have to imagine it is so comfortable and so reassuring as a player to say, hey, you know, some days we come out, we have a bad day. I'm not going home off one bad day, though. It's going to take 2. And if the Gilded Gladiators keep this up, I don't see any bad days coming.
Gilded Gladiators are one of the favorites to make it through to the Smite Pro League, and one player who's wanting to get his chance back in the SPL is Kyrmi the Jungler, standing by with a post-game interview.
Yeah, we got Kyrmi, jungler for the Gilded Gladiators, standing by with me, post-game interview. Kyrmi, Talk to me a bit, if you will, about early goings here. It's year 10 of Smite. Map completely changes. Jungle's being talked about as maybe one of the strongest roles in the game right now. Do you feel like it's in a spot that really caters to your play style? We got to see a Mercury from you. We saw Susano from you, playmaking style junglers. Do you feel like that's how you want to be playing the game?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really good for... I think jungle's kind of disgusting right now, especially with a lot of the hyper carries. So it feels really easy to play the game that way. I think I played a little shaky game 1, but it's just getting the nerves out of the way. But other than that, yeah, I really like the gods I get to play.
Talk to me about your perspective then as a jungler. Do you feel extra pressure? If you're in the mindset that this is one of the strongest roles on the map, is there an extra weight that you need to be performing a little extra for your team?
Not just because of the role, but maybe more just how we are coming into the tournament. I do expect us to make SPL. Whether it's first or second, I'm not sure. It's just going to be how the three of us, the Glads show up on that day. I think we can easily sweep through this entire tournament, but we'll just have to see.
Well, that instills a lot of confidence, I think, in you guys and the rest of the fans that were out watching. That was one of the cleanest sets we've seen so far. If you will, brief, how did this team find one another? Did you guys mesh very quickly, and was this sort of an expected result based on how things have gone in your early scrims, in your early practice?
It's definitely expected based on how we were doing really well in scrims, especially really leading up to this tournament, but it kind of got down to the point where there was a lot of miscommunication with the other top 2 teams on who wanted to play with who. So a lot of us kind of ended up left alone without teams, so we just started building together. But we're all really good guys. They instill a lot of confidence in me, which helps me a ton, and playing more confident and playing better, which I've been really enjoying. But I'm really glad I'm with these guys.
Look, there were smiles through the player booth. I could tell a lot of players happy with the way that first set went. I imagine it's a weight off. Kyrmi, excited to see what the Gladiators get done the rest of this weekend. Thanks for your time. We'll go back to the desk to wrap it up.
Yeah, it sounds like Kyrmi and the rest of the Gladiators happy with the win they were able to find up here against the Xibalba Storm. They're going to continue on in towards the winner's bracket, and we're going to take a look at the bracket for the entire week, still to be seen. Gilded Gladiators will now face off against the Eldritch Hounds, another one of those top 3 teams that is kind of predicted amongst the casters, along with the Aru Scorpions and the Niflheim Wargs. So kind of the 4 teams that we were talking about in our caster roundtable, still up there in the semifinals of the winner's side of the brackets. Then obviously, the winners of those will move on for a chance to qualify into the SPL. Opposite end of the bracket, though, Xibalba Storm will now await the losers of the Tartarus Titans and the Valhalla Valkyries. That match will be played just a little bit later on. And then the Athenian Sages and the Kalan Wardens will face off for Mat 7 to face off against the Yomi Tanuki, who are now down in the losers bracket. So our last 2 games of today are going to be elimination matches. And every day here on, we're going to be sending at least 1 team home. And I believe, if I remember correctly on how it all breaks down, sending 2 teams home every single day from here on for the rest of the tournament, Myth.
Yeah, and looking at that bracket, I think there is a clear delineation in one of these sets is going to be so important for qualification, and it's match 12. That's the Gladiators up against the Hounds. I think that is going to be one of the most telling sets. If you can only watch one more this week, watch more. But if you can only watch one more, make sure you stick around for match 12. I mean, that is going to be so indicative of where the power rankings really stand.
Yeah, I think all eyes are set on the winner's bracket for those 4 teams still there, but now we're going to move ourselves into the lower bracket of those ones. We got 2 more sets to go, so stick around. We've got match number 3 of our day coming up right after this break.
Let's go.